Hello and welcome back to the Villa Filler podcast. I'm here, as always, with my good friend Dan Weissman. Dan, some late night Villa Filler action going on. They're the best kinds of Villa Fillers, mate. You just know that the vibes are going to be impeccable. How you doing, bro?
Yeah, I'm good, mate. Just realised that I've dressed slightly inappropriately for this podcast, haven't I? Really, on in bright red. It's not great. It's the balls, I promise. There's no secret allegiances here. But yeah, could have probably dressed a bit better for the occasion. But that aside, mate, all good.
Fantastic stuff, mate. Fantastic stuff. Do you know what? We'll talk. That's actually led me quite nicely into a comment because somebody mentioned. I can't find the comment now, so I hope the person hasn't deleted it. Maybe I was looking at the wrong podcast. Somebody gave a shout out to the X-Men shirt I was wearing. So whoever it was,
nice.
You're the real MVP. We got Doctor Strange on today. I thought I'd keep it on brand, considering Multiverse of Madness is out and all that kind of stuff. But less of that, less of the nerd talk, because that's a whole other podcast. Before we get into this match preview, guys, we have a word from today's video sponsor. This video is sponsored by the wonderful guys over at OneFootball. It is the place to get all of the most up-to-date football news, scores, articles, live updates. You couldn't ask for more. Dan, we use this app every single day of our lives, and they've been kind enough to sponsor us here at the Villa Filler again.
Yeah, it powers the podcast, mate. It's my go-to place for live scores, stats, and news from 200 leagues, 12 different languages. It's got the lot, mate.
So, guys, if you check out OneFootball using the link in the top of the description, it'll help us out, it'll help you guys out, and it'll help you just enjoy the game that little bit more. Be like Dan and I, download OneFootball. So, guys, if you haven't checked out OneFootball, make sure you do so using the top link in the description. It helps Dan and I out more than you could ever imagine. Now, Dan, I mean, what is there to be said about Liverpool Football Club, realistically? I think, controversially, I think this is the perfect time to play them. I do genuinely think that they're fresh off the back of what will be an absolutely gut-punching 1-1 draw at home to Tottenham, which Jurgen Klopp was not happy about whatsoever. He did not like the fact that that Tottenham sat back and defended and put their counter-attacks. It's a game that Tottenham led in, and Liverpool had to really fight to get back into this one, mate. And it was a hard-earned point, but given the context of the Premier League title race, it's advantage City, especially after the big 5-0 win, mate. They're going to be absolutely on the floor, mate, aren't they? And I think, we've heard the term mentality monsters be branded about Liverpool, but I think had they have won against Tottenham, we're looking at a completely different preview. A game that we're looking to outline here, mate. Of course, it's Liverpool and they are fantastic, but this could is the key word, be the perfect time to play them, mate.
Yeah, it's such a difficult one, isn't it? Because, when I saw that result, I was like, you can spin it both ways, can't you? You can be like, that draw. I think, honestly, like with the way that these two sides are playing like football, that one slip up, that one game they failed to win, that could be curtains. It really could. It felt like, there was, between the two teams, there was going to be one slip up left this season. I feel like Liverpool just made it. And so you can sort of look at it both ways. You're absolutely right, mate, where you're like, right, okay, there it is. That could be it. They've had basically, they'll feel like that, they're chasing a gap which may never close in Manchester City. Attention will shift to the two cup finals that they've still got to play. Especially just a few days afterwards. I mean, it's been a pretty hectic schedule for them, hasn't it? With the, that they had to put everything into that second half against Villarreal to get through. It was then a pretty grueling 90 against Spurs, as you said, mate, to then come to Villa Park. So, yeah, a lot on that. But you're right in saying that, that mentality is always there, mate. It could be, there is that counter argument where you're like, okay, there's the slip up. Liverpool very rarely miss a beat twice. You can make the argument to say that because they've had that draw and because they've had that slip, we've seen it before. Take the Villarreal game. They've had that first half, and now the second half they come out all guns blazing to make a point and put themselves back where they should be. So, yeah, it would be very interesting to see what Liverpool side comes out. I think Stevie and the boys will have to read into the fact that you have to prepare for the best side of Liverpool. They can't be prepared for the side that, got the draw or anything like that at Anfield. They'll be preparing for the side that just got into the Champions League final in that very same week. So, yeah, very difficult, mate. And it's hard to preview these kind of games, isn't it? Because, you and I are always the optimists on the podcast, but it's hard to back the Villa in this one, mate, isn't it?
It is. And what I've found interesting, mate, about if you look at both legs in the Villarreal tie in the Champions League, what did they do, mate? They played 4-4-2, very well drilled, 2 strikers up front, obviously. Now, who else has been playing 2 strikers recently, mate? Only Aston bloody Villa. Danny Ings and Ollie Watkins, a sort of a homecoming of sorts for Danny Ings. Hasn't spent... I'm sure he would maybe describe some of his days at Liverpool as being fantastic and insightful and all these wonderful things, but 2 horrendous injuries he sustained whilst being at Liverpool. And I think, left Liverpool ultimately with a point to prove, and was a player that, it's not very often that Klopp praises any player that isn't a Liverpool player, really. And every time we've seen him come up against Danny Ings or even speak about him, he's got nothing but amazing things to say about him, which, I guess Jurgen Klopp knows ball, and I guess he listens to the Villa Filler podcast, mate, because this is a hymn sheet we've been singing from for the longest time. And if Jurgen Klopp thinks you're a player, you clearly are a player. That is all the validation we need for our opinions, mate. I think the 2 strikers, I think that's something that, first of all, as we know, mate, not many teams play with 2 up front in general in the Premier League. I don't think it's going to... I think this may be a somewhat controversial opinion, mate. I think people have forgotten how to defend against 2 strikers. That isn't me saying that we're going to absolutely run away with this and we're going to score so many goals, but so much of like the modern game is sort of coached and defending is coached on spaces and where you need to be. And generally, for the past sort of 10 years, it's been 4-3-3, really. Of course, there are exceptions to this. You look at Leicester, the title winning side. Atletico Madrid generally play with the 2 up front. There are always going to be those, except you look at Burnley or whoever. I think the absolute best thing that can happen, mate, is that we play this 4-4-2 diamond that we have been playing, because you've just got to look at the fullbacks. Alexander-Arnold and Robertson are going to be bombing up more often than not, leaving the 2 centre-backs not isolated, because generally you've got Fabinho sitting. But if Villa can be as compact as we were against Burnley and have been against Leicester and again against Norwich as well, as I mentioned in the last podcast, mate, spaces between the defence and the midfield much closer, which helps us when we're out of possession for sure. I think we can pick our moments, and if we can hold in there, and we will be holding in there for dear life, mate, because we've seen it's not easy to defend against the top sides. Look at the Spurs game that we played a few weeks ago. I think 2 strikers could cause havoc, mate. I really do.
Yeah, you know what, mate? It's like we've actually given a pretty good account of ourselves in this fixture since our promotion. You think back to the first season at home to Liverpool, where we so nearly got a result, and it was stolen away right at the death, wasn't it, in stoppage time? Obviously, last season, a result that will live long in the memory with the 7-2. So, we've gone into this fixture, I dare say, perhaps even less confident than we are now. Certainly in the first season, I think we were inevitably, all of us would have been expecting a hammering, given that, we were in the midst of a relegation battle at the time. So, yeah, I mean, we've come into this fixture in worse places than we are now, with lesser options than we have now. I think it'd be interesting to see how Stevie goes. Obviously, he will want to, always perform well against his former side. You imagine it's one for Philippe as well to go and play his best in. So hopefully we get the best out of those 2 guys. And yeah, as I said, mate, we've written the Villa off before, I imagine, going into this game. We've always given ourselves a good account. I'm not, as I said, sitting here saying we're going to win, but it'll be really interesting to see how Liverpool line up, because everything's been given in the past to the other half of that sort of title race, hasn't it? In terms of the changes made to an 11 before the game, Pep Roulette and all that. But I actually think that mantle's sort of shifted over to Liverpool this season. And you look at the way that they have those sort of front, 5 or 6 when you include now sort of Luis Diaz and Jota to the traditional front three of Salah, Mane and Firmino. The way that they've rotated those sort of 5 or 6 players into a variety of different positions, whether that be Mane through the middle, Jota through the middle. We've seen Luis Diaz play on both sides. So it'd be interesting to see how Liverpool approach this game. They obviously rotated quite heavily for the trip to Newcastle. And they got away with it. As I say, they got away with it. They won that game. Trent was on the bench, Fabinho was on the bench, the likes of Milner came in and stuff like that. So they have rotated quite heavily in recent weeks. And regardless, they never really seem to make a wrong decision with the selection. But, if they do opt for a similar kind of lineup to the one that they did against Newcastle, if the likes of Milner come into the team and stuff like that, you never know. You never know. I mean, that does change. It certainly felt like that Liverpool team was slightly more beatable than it is at full strength. And if they did something, you imagine there will be changes and stuff like that. That can creep in and look, as I said, mate, it's not something where, again, I imagine this is going to swing it in Villa's favour, but you look at it and you think it's not. I don't expect a hammering. I do think we'll be in this game. I think it will be close. And as you said, mate, with the two up front, if we can get that working, it does provide a different challenge for them.
Absolutely. And, even at Anfield earlier on in the season, mate, it was really close. We lose that game 1-0 to a penalty, I believe. And there was that wonderful moment where Ezri Konsa managed to deal with the world's probably currently the best front three, I think it's fair to say, in a 3-on-1 counter-attack, absolutely managed to dispatch them himself, which is always nice to see. And if you look back at the lineup for that game, that you can see already how far we've come. I mean, maybe that's a bit hyperbolic of me, but Ashley Young started on the wing that day. JJ as well playing in that game. It's a game where Marvelous Nakamba was fit. We saw Danny Ings come off the bench, Morgan Sanson as well. I thought Sanson was fantastic in this fixture as well, mate. He really was. Again, you're not going to catch me saying a bad word about Morgan Sanson. It's the Villa filler. Tick that off your bingo card for today, listeners. Matty Target, again, another one who's played in that game. And if my memory serves me correctly, Salah had cheated for a penalty, really, hadn't he? He'd thrown himself in front of Tyrone Mings, and they got the penalty that way. And we had a few chances in that game. I think one thing that is for sure always on the cards, Villa fans are always up for this game. The atmosphere is always electric when Liverpool comes to town, because it's Liverpool fans, they generally bring the atmosphere as well. So there's always some good back and forth, and it'll be interesting to see how, after a few wins, mate, how the crowd, can positively influence the players, hopefully. But again, mate, EMI Buendia, fantastic in the last game. Philippe Coutinho, you've got the story arc of him returning to his former club, the club that kind of give him everything, mate. The platform that allowed him to flourish was Liverpool Football Club. Do you start him in this game? It feels like it's crazy again that we're having this week by week debate of, do we start Coutinho? And, should it be Buendia? It's hard to say for your record signing who got a goal and an assist in the last game. Sorry, mate. You're going to have to sit this one out just for sentimental reasons. I don't know where I stand on this one, mate, to be honest, because you can play both, but you lose Ingsy, and I'm not losing Ingsy.
Yeah, mate. Yeah, it's very interesting. It's very interesting. The weirdest part is I can't imagine there is a world where, and maybe there is, maybe I'll be surprised, but Steven Gerrard, of all people, looks ahead to a game against Liverpool and puts Coutinho on the bench. Like, it just seems bizarre. You imagine that he'll want to work everything within his power to try and get him into that side. How it works, I don't know. You've got the added headache of both Ollie and Ingsy scoring against Burnley. So both the strikers are on the score sheet. So what, you're going to drop either of those boys? Buendia was brilliant. Oh, it's tough, mate. It's tough. Obviously, there is always the option to drop, one of them slightly deeper and play in that sort of advanced 8 role, but you obviously sacrifice a lot of the defensive, power and the structure that you need to go and perform against Liverpool. It's one thing having Coutinho in this team, but you need to give him the license to go and do the things that he does. If you Yeah, it will be really interesting, mate. But, it's not to say that there isn't something to be said for him coming off the bench. We'll inevitably see him at some point. I think he's proven to be a real weapon, especially at Villa Park in substitute appearances. His debut will live long in the memory for how he came on and changed that game. And if we do manage to get to a point in the game where it's 60 minutes, 60 minutes is one, bringing Coutinho off the bench, that's a huge power swing, mate. That's a huge power.
Yeah.
Coutinho is on the bench. It's not to say he's not in Gerrard. Certain, and I think there's everything to be said that, Gerrard will be hoping if we can get to that point, so midway through the second half, and then we can go, okay, let's switch it up. Here comes Coutinho, maybe a formation change. A lot can happen then. A lot can once that narrative gets into play. So, it'd be very interesting. But if he is on the bench, I don't think you can count him out.
For sure, mate. I think, they're both players that at the drop of a hat can change a game and influence it. At the moment, I think it's fair to say that the momentum is swinging finally towards EMI Buendia. But, if you're going to replace EMI Buendia, who better to bring him off with Philippe Coutinho, as you say, mate. It's a decision, again, thankfully we don't have to make, mate, because I think we would struggle gravely in doing so. But guys, it's the business end of the season now, and this is going to be a massive game. Tuesday night, Villa Park. It's a rearranged game. As you alluded to earlier, mate, looking at their fixtures, they have an FA Cup final next, a trip away to Southampton, then they're home to Wolves, and then they've got the Champions League final, which is obviously in Paris after that's been moved. They've got so many huge games, and it'd be ridiculous to say that the quadruple still isn't on because, Man City still could lose a game, don't know. It's going to be really interesting to see how Klopp prioritises this one with his players, mate, especially that front three, and a player who I'm both fearful but absolutely excited to see in the flesh, mate, Luis Diaz. The man is an absolute fucking freak, isn't he?
Demon, mate. Demon.
Where do they find these players, mate? Where do they find these players? Honestly, scored the goal against Tottenham the other day as well. It's very rare these days, and this is just a sort of a commentary on signing players as a whole, really, I guess. It's very rare a player comes in and hits the ground running. When you look at Luis Diaz, you look at how long, first of all, it's taken Liverpool to cultivate a system, a style of play, a culture. To see someone like Diaz come in and hit the ground running straight away when so many have struggled. You only have to look at a Minamino. He was clearly never going to supersede Salah, Mane, Firmino, or whoever, or you can include Jota in that as well, I guess. Diaz has come in and hit the ground running, mate, and Matty Cash has been absolutely fantastic ever since, I think, ever since Gerrard's come in, really. He's probably the most improved player. And with the end of season awards coming up, I'm sure he's going to win fans player this season. I think he's been absolutely, he's had a real, I don't want to say a turnaround, but the offensive output was always there. But again, my biggest criticism, you have to be a two-way player. And he's proven to be that, but it's going to be really difficult against a player like Diaz, mate, isn't it? I think it's probably going to be his toughest challenge to date.
Yeah, 100%, mate. Diaz has been a phenomenon. Liverpool have done a great job in sort of building for the future. It's very interesting when you sort of look at, you would have said a couple of years ago, okay, but once that front three of Mane, Firmino and Salah dies out, Liverpool are done for. And now you kind of look at it and Jota's going to fill that central role. Diaz takes one of the rolls out wide. Harvey Elliott is starting to impress as well, sort of bubbling through. He's getting his minutes once he comes back from this injury. Mane's going to stick around, whether Salah signs or not. You sort of think Liverpool are going to be all right. And so, it's going to be very interesting to see. God, stuff and nightmares, mate. I'm looking at that, and I'm not even Matty Cash, and I'm thinking, God, that is a tough night's work. He is not going to sleep very well on Monday night, mate. That is a big old test. Just because of his sheer 1v1 ability. So, yeah, that's going to be very interesting, mate. And I hope for Matty's sake that he's one of the rotations that leaves him on the bench, I think.
Absolutely, mate. Absolutely. But you'll never know. We'll have to wait and see. Guys, hopefully, Tuesday night can come round fairly quick. I'm looking forward to this one. I'm looking forward to being back at Villa Park. Somewhat under the lights. It's always a vibe, and you guys know how important we can be as the 12th man, especially under the lights. These nights are special, man. So, I was unfortunate to have missed that fabled night against another Merseyside club under the lights upon our return to the Premier League, mate. That is sort of hailed as one of the greatest nights in recent years supporting Villa. So hopefully we can have a result, a performance, an atmosphere that can replicate that, just for me, for selfish purposes. But of course, so as Villa can secure the win. It'd be great. Let us know if you go in. It'd be great if anybody's there. It'd be great to say hi, as always. And let us know your score predictions in the comments down below, how you're feeling about this one. And guys, please subscribe. Villa won a game. You guys all watch the podcast. Amazing. It's fantastic. Had a few subscribers. We've only had 5 in the past month, mate. 5 subscribers now. I know Villa have been bad, but come on, guys. Help us reach our goal before the end of the season. Download OneFootball so as you can stay as informed as Dan and I are on the game that we love so much. And yeah, please subscribe. Up the Villa.